I've been a physician for over 30 years. I started my career as a surgeon, actually, and after 4 years, made a change and ended up in anesthesia. Also went on to specialize in pain management with anesthesia. And so I was board certified in both general anesthesiology and pain management and practiced that for, a few decades. I was actually I was kind of on a search for something because I noticed that after years and years of practicing medicine, that nobody ever seemed to get better. Now, when you're a surgeon, it's one thing because you're opening people up, you're taking care of a problem, closing them up, and sending them on their way. But when you're dealing, especially with chronicity, chronic pain, people just seem to come back. And I had delved into a number of different alternative and complementary forms of medicine. They didn't really have a lot of integrative when I was doing it, but I learned acupuncture, mind, body, energy medicine, things like that, trying to find a way to help my patients get back to better health. And I used to think of health as being almost like a stair step, and people would be somewhere on that stair step and they wouldn't really go to their doctor until they were going kind of down and looking at the bottom, kind of the point of no return. And then they would have an expectation that their doctor could get them back up that staircase. Well, your doctor can only get you to where you started. They really, unless you buy into everything, can't get you to that upper level of optimal health. So it's really interesting. I like to say that all roads lead to Asea because I was introduced to it back in 2012. And at that time, I had gone back into training for something called age management medicine, which is concierge medicine. And it's helping people to age optimally because we all want that. The older I get, the more, excuse me, important those things become, because we all want to live to be, 100 years old and maybe older. But we want to be out doing the things that we love. We want to be traveling and playing pickleball and tennis and golfing and having a lot of fun. We're not really visualizing ourselves in wheelchairs with people, wiping slobber off of us or other things. We want to be fully functioning and have a great quality of life. And that's where age management came in. And so I had kind of pivoted in my medical career looking for a way to help people get healthy and stay healthy and optimize that. And so that's what I was doing, when this came into our lives. But to explain a little bit more, my husband, the pediatric anesthesiologist and stem cell, his lab is actually credited with growing lungs outside the body in a bioreactor and transplanting them into a pig. And this many years ago, they were featured in Science, Translational Medicine, actually had the front cover, sent experiments up on SpaceX to the space station. Really incredible work. But my husband was also with the military. And so before I had started that training, he had come home with a terrible diagnosis that they had. It was just so ridiculous. He was running 10 miles in a sandstorm and had an episode of wheezing, which he's not asthmatic. He doesn't normally have wheezing. And one of the other doctors talked him into getting a chest x-ray, and it showed he had a huge mass in his chest. I mentioned we live in Galveston, Texas. They sent him home to Houston to a specialized hospital there where they took care of him. They did surgery. They treated him with harsh pharmaceuticals, did high beam to kill everything off in the surgical area. And they cured him. And we were very, very blessed, very thankful for that. But the problem is that the treatment left him incredibly compromised. He went from being an athlete, former marathon runner, to literally having to wear oxygen to sit and watch TV. So that's where we were, both, highly trained, both had incredible careers in medicine. I loved being a doctor, and I was actually chief of anesthesia when I was up in Massachusetts at Marlborough Community Hospital, which was part of the UMass system. And I was fortunate. My husband is a Harvard undergrad, and we lived up in Cambridge. And he's trained in the Harvard system, and I worked in the Harvard system. And so we had really incredible, if you will, careers and loved it. But I was in this state of flux because I had a little bit of a crisis of faith in what I was doing. I wasn't sure how I was practicing medicine was helping anyone, which is why I went into this training. But right before I started is when Asea came into our lives. And a friend of mine who was with another company whose wellness products I used in my pain clinic he had left that company, and I saw something posted on Facebook, and I called him and I said, "Why did you leave? I know why I left, but I don't know why you left, because you were so successful with that company." And he was doing it as a business. And he said, "Hey, I came across a breakthrough and it's changing people's lives." And I was like, "Okay, I'll bite. What is it?" And he said, "Oh, it's made from salt water from Salt Lake City." What? I had actually heard about this before when my mom was really sick. And someone had called me and said, "You really need to check into this. You really need to try this for your mom." And I'm ashamed to say that she sent me, such a sweetheart, sent me all this information. And I thought it just sounded ridiculous, honestly. I thought I knew better. I call it my era of arrogance and ignorance, because sometimes you just don't know what you don't know, and you're not open to learning. And, a lot of us medical professionals are guilty of that. And my mom died, a couple months later. And that was in June. And here in November of that same year, 2012, is when I'm having this conversation with my friend Terry Latham. And I was like, "Oh, are you kidding me? You fell for that?" And he's like, "I can send you some videos and some information, but this is really changing people's lives." And I was like, because I knew him and I trusted him as a business person, not as a medical person, but as a business person, I was like, "Let me take a look." And it's a really funny turn of events, because I looked at it, and it was actually athletes. It was Dr. David Neiman at the Appalachian State Human Performance Lab, who had done some studies on athletes showing that they could run further, faster, longer, and recover faster. And it had changed their metabolites. And, I didn't really know what the mode of action was, but I was like, well, my husband is an athlete. This is helping athletes perform better. Maybe it'll help him. And so we got on the product. But it's funny, I was talking to my sister who lives in Charleston, South Carolina, and she's not a doctor, nurse, scientist, anything. But I said to her, Latham is talking to me about redox signaling molecules. I've never even heard of anything like this. And she's like, "Well, I have." And I was like, "No, you haven't." She's like, "No, I have." She's a medical editor, and they had just received I went to medical school there. They had just received a $10.5 million NIH Cobra grant to study redox signaling in the body with cardiovascular disease, neurodegenerative, orthopedic, diabetes, aging, you name it. They were studying it, the native molecules in the body and how they worked. So she sent me the press release. And as you can imagine, if there's other healthcare professionals out there, here's my buddy, Terry Latham, with a background in computer sales, and my sister, the medical editor, and they both know about redox signaling molecules, and I don't. So of course I had to do a deep dive, so went straight to PubMed, which is Google for medical professionals, and looked at it. And back then there was this back in 2012, the end of 2012, there's about 6,500 references there to redox signaling in the body. And I was kind of blown away. There were already journals, there were already books written on this. And it was just something that as an anesthesiologist, it had not come across my desk, because we're back to cellular biology and the Krebs cycle. I don't want to turn anybody off early, but yes, we're back to mitochondria and energy production and all of that. So that's how we got introduced and how we got started, and how two doctors ended up ordering the product to see what it would do for them. So anyway, long story short, we had an amazing response to it. And that's why we're still here today. We got the product, and we didn't really I had no expectations. And to be quite fair, I really was hoping that it wouldn't work. Not that I don't love my husband and that I didn't want him to get better. But I had a lot of guilt, as you can imagine, as a doctor, with my mom being so sick, and my feeling like I should be able to save her, I should be able to fix things. And I couldn't, and I was kind of taken aback by that I really, but it's, I give myself some solace, because I went to take her to Budvig's clinic at the south of Spain, where they do all sort of alternative stuff. And when she found out that they did coffee enemas, she was like, there are worse things than dying. And I was like, "It's just coffee. You like coffee." She likes tea better, but it was a coffee enema. So I'm not sure she would have drank the molecules, because those of you who have tried it, when you first get on it, it has it's reminiscent of swimming in at the YMCA pool. It has this sort of flavor or aroma to it. So, but I was really hoping that it was a scam and that, I wasn't going to have to deal with that with being closed-minded. But of course, it didn't work like that. But it didn't work fast for us either. Said on the back of the bottle, 2 ounces twice a day. So, I was in my early 50s. My husband was in his, mid to late 50s. And we're just drinking 2 ounces twice a day. We don't know to do anything else. And my son was home, that was a whole nother story, but with everything going on, he had just started college and, started kind of having panic attacks and generalized anxiety. And let me go on to say this is not a medical company. We don't cure, prevent, treat, diagnose anything. We're just giving the body back something so that it can work more efficiently and effectively. So usually I don't use diagnoses. So anyway, he was dealing with this and I flew out. He was out in California. I flew out there. I just withdrew him from school. I said, we're going to bring you home. We're going to get this under control. I mean, my plate was just overflowing with everything that was happening. And so we put him on the product too. And, I had no expectations. I thought it sounded ridiculous. I couldn't imagine that, I'd been dealing with salt water. Gosh, I lived on an island, we're surrounded by salt water, hanging saline bags for my entire career, so I really didn't think there were going to be any special properties. But a funny thing happened when I joined, and I joined as a member and to get the best possible pricing. But I said to Terry, listen, I'm not going to any meetings. I'm not going to learn a secret handshake. Don't be calling me, seeing if I want to share it with my friends and family. I don't. I just want to see if my husband is going to get better. But a girlfriend of mine found out that I joined and she signed up and she ordered the product. And then another girlfriend of mine who lived in Seattle, she was a retired ER nurse and she had had surgery on her wrist the year before. And a year later, she was still having excruciating discomfort. It was keeping her up all night. Her hand was swelling up. It was turning colors. She couldn't make a fist. She couldn't write. It was her dominant hand. And she was just a mess. And I said, I'm pretty sure I know what this is. I said, you need to get to a pain clinic to have an actual diagnosis. And this is doctor to nurse. I said, but in the meantime, Latham, she knew Terry Latham. Latham has told me about this stuff. I don't know what it is. I don't know how it works, but you've tried everything else. You might as well try it. And if it doesn't work, you can get your money back and I don't care. That was my, incredible endorsement of the product. Well, I got a call from Terry, 2 weeks later. He said, hey, Joan signed up. I said, Joan who? He said, Joan, your friend in Seattle with the wrist. I was like, I don't think so. He said, you should call her. So I called her up and I said, did you order this product? And she said, oh my gosh, yes. She said, it came, I drank it. I actually, soaked my hand in it for 45 minutes. I was like, doesn't say that on the back of the bottle. But anyway, she did it. She soaked her hand. She said the color came back. The swelling went down. I can make a fist. I can write. It's much more comfortable. I slept through the night. My husband says I haven't looked this good in ages. And I was like, what? Because I knew what she had. And let me tell you what, it is something very, very difficult to deal with. And I said, are you kidding me? So anyway, that turned my head. And then suddenly about 6 weeks in, wasn't fast, 6 weeks, just taking the 2 ounces in the morning, 2 ounces at night. I woke up one morning and I had been so down, so guilt-ridden, so sad. My mom was like my best friend. My mom and my sister were my two best friends. And, to lose somebody like that, and a lot of you have probably experienced that, it was devastating to me. And so here I am about six weeks in, and all of a sudden it's like birds are singing and colors are brighter and I can take a deep breath again. I was like, oh my God, I'm back to being me. This feels so good. And I had no idea. I wasn't going to give Asea credit for that until my son came bounding into the living room. We said he went from being Eeyore to Tigger. I mean, it was a total personality change. Absolutely. And then within a very short period of time, I have to tell you, my husband, he was like an invalid. Just walking across the room would wipe him out. He would struggle to get the refrigerator door open. It was heartbreaking because here was a man who was so physical. When he was over in Iraq, he was doing yoga, P90X, running, you name it. And he came home and he was just, he looked like somebody ready for a nursing home, honestly. And so suddenly the guy's doing burpees. I mean, a total transformation. And if you've seen my husband, those of you who have met him, you would never, ever guess that he had ever been so sick. I mean, you just never would. I mean, he's gotten, it didn't happen totally overnight. It was a journey. But, when they came and carted off all those green cylinders with the little holder and all, I mean, it was like the best day of my life. One of the best days. So, just felt so incredibly. And I thought, oh my gosh, I almost laughed at this and didn't do it, and I could have missed this. Here my husband is getting his health back and his stamina back and his vigor. My kid, and as a mom, you guys know when your kids are suffering, you suffer, and you don't know what that does. And it's so funny because we were big Disney fans. We're still Disney fans, but the kids are getting older and they want to go to Europe. I was like, there's Epcot. You can go all around the world in a day, but they're not seeing it that way. But anyway, we were there at Christmas and the castle is all lit up. It's absolutely beautiful. It's dripping with all these lights and it's just gorgeous. And Christopher was in front of it and he was like, it's beautiful, but I know it's not real. And I don't see, the whole family was like, are you taking your Asea? And he was like, no, I was at Uncle Timmy's and we made him go back to the hotel and drink an entire bottle. And he said, I am so thankful. He was like, thank you so much for doing that because it saved his holiday, it saved his vacation. So it's just kind of funny how it affected. We had no idea. I called the company. I said, do you have people talk about mood elevation? They're like, all the time. And I was like, gosh, wonder what's going on. Now we know from the Tori Lab study that was done about 6 years ago that different hormones are affected, including serotonin. So, I think you got a little serotonin boost, and me too, and everybody loves that, just makes you feel good. That sort of stuff really got my attention. So you guys, when I finished my certification, and it took a while to do that, it was a lot of book studying, and then there was, practicals and everything. And I came home and I said to my husband, you know what, I'm not actually going to do that. And he said, what do you mean you're not going to do that? And I said, I'm not hanging my shingle. I'm not going to have a practice. I'm not going to do that. And he said, what are you talking about? I said, this is what I think has been missing the whole time. This is what I've been searching for, is this missing link. I said, I don't know exactly how it's doing it, but it's what's making everybody better. I was like, we're putting all the parts together, but it needs this one piece of the jigsaw puzzle for everything to fall in place. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to start educating people about redox. I'm going to let go of the outcome. I'm just going to bring them the information. What they do with it is up to them, free will. But I just feel like people need to know that this is out there, because I will tell y'all, I've written hundreds, if not thousands, of prescriptions over the years, especially opioids. Thank God I got out before the opioid crisis, because you're trying to help people have a quality of life. And there's so many side effects. And then you throw addiction on top of that. And just terrible, and here we've got our hands on something that is not just natural, it's native to the body. It's made in every cell of your body, in the mitochondria, as part of the energy production. And these are the secret communication of your cells. It's how they communicate with each other. And we know, because we're all familiar with when that communication goes awry, what happens? Things get out of whack. Body starts attacking self, right? Inflammation runs rampant. So when you correct that communication with that, when you correct that cellular lineage and communication between the cells, the language of the cells, then things start to normalize and they go back to the way your body was meant to behave, how it was meant to respond. And we know the body is miraculous. It heals itself. If you give it the right tools, it's incredible what it can do. And that's what we see. All we're doing is providing tools. The cells are the ones that are doing the work. But I was like, people, this is 100% non-toxic. It's so powerful. It's so natural, and I was like, people, nobody I knew, even though, my doctor friends, none of them had heard of redox signaling, that it just wasn't a thing. Interestingly, we had heard of it, we had studied in chemistry, because it's all the exchange of electrons, and all of y'all have studied it too. If you had high school or college chemistry, you may have blocked it out, but you probably did study it. That's what this is. This is imparting the electrons, and And if you don't mind my taking a second to talk about how this is made, because people are like, what, how is that? They take this pristine solution, saline solution, pristine, pure down to parts per billion, if not parts per trillion. And then they electrolyze it. They put a current through it for a certain amount of time. And there's certain constants that have to be there. And what they do is they energize those molecules so that they break apart and they reconfigure as these redox signaling molecules. So you're driving up the energy and they're stable. They're stable in solution, which is absolutely supposed to be impossible. It's really amazing. They're just sort of sitting in this solution until they touch organic matter. Now, the three things that the molecules will react with is metal. So we say, don't take it out of anything metal, organic matter, and minerals. That's why the saline solution has to be so pure. So people are always saying, well, can't I just use Himalayan salt or Mediterranean salt? No, it won't work because of the minerals. It'll just work on the minerals. And that's why we also say, take it on an empty stomach or just don't have food in your mouth because it's going to go to work on the burger and not on your liver and heart and everything that we want it to work on. So anyway, when you take it, these molecules are tiny and they go straight into the cell, straight through that cell membrane. And for those of you who have studied cell biology and you remember there's all those different pumps and all those different channels and everything, and this is passive, it goes directly in. And when it gets in there, it turns things on. We know it turns on certain genes, certain beneficial genes. It turns on different processes. And then one cell affects the cell next to them, kind of like a domino or cascading effect. And that leads to overall increased resilience to stress and overall wellness. It's pretty amazing. So when you take that product and you hold it in your mouth for 20, 30 seconds, swish it around, you're taking up about 85% of the molecules in that amount that you put in your mouth, and it goes to work. And so, for a lot of time, my husband and I, we take 8 ounces a day. We started with that 2 ounces twice a day. And we figured out through the efforts of other people and through the TARA lab study, because they were using 8 ounces on healthy 35-year-olds. We like taking 8 ounces, but we were like, we've been taking this for years. We're at steady state. We'll just down 8 ounces in the morning and then we're good to go. Maybe we'll take more in the afternoon. Recent studies have shown that breaking that up and making that cascade, because you turn that cascade on, it kind of rolls through it, and then it comes to completion. So you want to turn that cascade on more than once. So if you divide your doses, you're going to get a bigger bang for your buck. If you hold the solution, like I said, in your mouth for 20, 30 seconds, you're going to get more efficacy. Now, I was just speaking to someone who's on fluid restriction. I was like, okay, hold it in your mouth, swish it around, spit it out. Then you don't have to worry about the volume, or use the gel, which is a topical form. But I was like, there is a benefit to swallowing it. Believe it or not, when it hits the acid in the stomach, it forms more redox molecules. How cool is that? And then that goes in and affects your microbiome in your gut. So, a win-win-win. I just want to say that, it's been such a blessing. It's been a blessing in so many ways. I absolutely love to see how people respond to this. People, their pets, their loved ones, because the cool thing about this that's different from being a doctor, and I love being a doctor, don't get me wrong. I loved it. It was such an honor. It really was. But here I've got something that I can share, I can educate people about, and they can turn around and they can share it with their loved ones, with people that they care about, and make a real impact. Because not everybody sees the value in this, or maybe not everybody has this budgeted for. I think everybody should be taking it, but it has to have value to the person you're sharing it with. But, just by my sharing it with a few people who turned around and shared it with other people, I've now influenced lives all over the world. And you know what? That never, in all the years I practiced medicine, that never happened. My patients, they would come back month after month, but they never brought friends with them to say, you got to hear this. You got to see what she's doing. Here they do, and they hug you and they send you thank you notes, and people that I've never personally met come up to me all the time to thank me for telling someone who told somebody else, who told somebody else, who changed their life. And y'all, that is just the most gratifying thing, especially as a physician. That is just so gratifying.